The article by Forbes was overall, I support it. It was an article about, how senior leaders should use LLMs on a day-to-day basis. And in general, the tips were pretty generic. There wasn't anything really all that transformational in the article, but it just had some basic tips for, I get it. If you're new to LLMs and you're a senior leader who's maybe slower to adopt tech, you may be going like, so what do I do with this? And it had some good suggestions, like, take your information and transform it into something visual, or try and take big clumps of information and distill it down. But then it had some ones that I was a little like another really basic one it had that I was like, yeah, I mean, fine. Like voice memo transcription. Sure. Honestly, transcription is more powerful than I think anybody realizes. That is incredible to be able to take a meeting, a dialogue, or whatever, and have it in text form that can then be processed and worked with, and you can see who said what and all this stuff. So those kinds of things, fantastic. The ones where I kind of went, oh, and even those two, I'm kind of like, ooh, this is where we need to have more guidance on this stuff. And it's not where I'm going to get into it. It's not limited to just senior leaders, but it's related to these because these are some of the problems that I'm seeing. Because then it said things like, well, use it for collaborative brainstorming. Use it for managing tough conversations with stakeholders. And I started getting into these and I go, oh, this is where on the surface, the advice isn't bad. Because as an example, for collaborative brainstorming, I love using generative AI. I love bouncing ideas around. If I think up something, I'll throw it in there and I'll pressure test it and go, help me. What am I not thinking about? What else could I be thinking about? Help me think through these decisions. That's great. Even the voice transcriptions. I love taking meetings I've been in, or even these podcasts, and getting the transcript and then throwing it in ChatGPT and then asking and nudging it and mining out of it some of the really insightful things that have come up. I mean, those, fine. Where I see concerns with some of this is in the execution of it. And it came up at multiple advisory board meetings. One was with a bunch of IT companies, and then another one was with a bunch of HR execs. And we were talking through the future for 2025. And everybody was talking similar to this. Well, this is what AI is good for. Use it for this. It's great for this, and all these other things. And I picked up on something that's coming out in the data that is very concerning to me. Because as we were running through on one of these meetings, the data points of where people are using generative AI, there were some themes. And the group kind of looked at me and said, Christopher, do you agree? Like, do you think these are the right things? And I said, yes. Just like with this Forbes article, I would say, yes, I agree these are good use cases for them. However, I have some very, very, very serious concerns with how people are going about it. And I'll give a really practical example to this. So in this HR one of the big areas that HR execs are planning on or looking for AI to help them in 2025 and beyond is in analytics, to help them, make sense of all the data they have and do all this other stuff. And my feedback was, here's my concern. When I work with HR leaders and just business leaders in general around AI and analytics, oftentimes analytics is an area they are not comfortable with. And so they're looking for AI to solve it for them instead of be a partner in working through it and helping kind of fill some of their gaps, but then also help push them to go further. They're almost looking for it to be a substitute rather than a thought partner. And I said, that is extremely, extremely dangerous. And one of the use cases that we talked through on this was succession planning. And one of the things that came up was a lot of companies are using AI to help with succession planning because it can look through countless amounts of data that companies hold and help identify who are the right people to be, chosen for selection and succession and all this stuff. And if you're not familiar with succession planning, I won't get into all the details, but in short, it's basically companies put lots of time and effort into figuring out who takes the place of leaders Should something happen to them? Should they move on? Should the company promote them or move them into other roles? So instead of having a gap, they, can backfill. And so one of the things is everybody's like, yeah, we should use AI because it can help identify this. And even to the group, I said, I was in a conversation recently where this happened. And when I brought up the question, what criteria did AI use for this? The room was just silent. And the response was, well, AI figured that out. And I went, oh, for Pete's sakes, like this is where we are going to go completely off the rails. Because what had happened in this instance was the organization had trusted the LLMs to look at the data and make decisions based on what it knew, and then just recommend who should be the successors. And then all the company was doing was validating, do they agree? But the problem with this is they didn't really know, well, what criteria were being used, and did we push back on this? Did we even train the AI on the values and the specific things that we want to be using and weighting certain things? They allowed it to just identify who it thought made the most sense. And when I started digging into how it came to these decisions, I was like, these are actually terrible criteria. So here we are choosing these people based on decisions made by AI, and then we're just doing the final. And this is where I get really nervous when people say, oh, well, we're keeping humans in the loop. And I'm like, which loops? Because if you've got them in the wrong loops, this is going to completely destroy you from the inside, and you won't even know it. Because just like this example where all of a sudden it was like, hey, look, we've got our whole list of successors. And you're like, now we have humans in the loop, see? Because now we have humans discussing who this was. It's like, yeah, but you had no humans in the loop in getting to this point. So what good? You just missed all of it. And so as I was reading this Forbes article, I was thinking through the same thing. I'm like, okay, like managing tough conversations with stakeholders. Sure, can you get some feedback or think through, hey, what are some perspectives I'm not considering and all this kind of stuff. But if you're looking to delegate difficult conversations to AI and say, AI, can you just do this for me, or just tell me what to say and I'll just be a parrot and repeat it, this is not going to go well. AI is an alien intelligence. It does not think, contextualize, understand, make decisions like we do. And so the decisions it makes, the way it comes to these conclusions, are not in our best interest all the time. And, I think of even the collaborative brainstorming that Forbes said. I mean, I love using AI to help collaborative brainstorm, but I'm very much integrated in that process. And I am very much also intentional about including other people with that and going, hey, like, what do we think? Like, other thoughts. What is AI not? It's just another thought partner in the room. It is not a replacement. And the concern I'm seeing with this, whether you're a senior leader, a mid-level leader, you're an individual, like, it doesn't matter, is we just as humans have this terrible tendency of going, I don't like doing something, so how do I get out of it? And right now, I'm seeing a lot of people taking the things they don't like doing or aren't very good at or just would prefer to avoid and saying, well, hey, AI is proving it can do it pretty well. Let's just let it do it. And that is not it. So just be really careful with this, because like I said, I see so many articles. I'm in so many discussions, and the nuance of this is so dangerous, because even people might hear me and go, well, I've heard you say it's good for that. And I'm like, yes, if you're using it the right way. If you're not, this will come back to bite you in ways you just are not even going to see coming. And so just please be really, really thoughtful and careful with this, and don't just think, I think that's a warning indicator light. If you're turning to AI because you go, I don't like this, and your goal isn't to go, I don't like this, but how can it make me better at it? And how can it help me actually lean in and participate in this? That's a big red boop, 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 boop. Like, that's a warning light that you're probably not using AI appropriately. And if you need help with it, get help. call me, like whatever, but just gosh, I see some of this stuff and I'm like, oh boy.